Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Let's start with the roll call. I read everyone's name down this time, so Lisa. Right here. Andre said he's not going to go back down. Kristen Long. Yep. Tiffany Jimenez. Me, Azir. Brandon Ford. Megan Kreider's gonna, I think, maybe on the Zoom. Stan Laughlin. I'll note your presence there. Dennis Masuti. Matt Mirandula here. David Turner. I'm assuming he'll be here. Okay. Rohit Lataria here. Joe Serena. Nick Akovic here. Nadia Nasiba here. Okay. So. Okay, do you have a quorum? We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The mission of ECS is to educate each student to high academic standards using innovative curricula that will foster knowledge, love of, and respect for the environment and preserve it for future generations, future citizens. Our vision, every ECS graduate will be an actively engaged citizen driving thoughtful change in the world around them. Recognition of guests. We have a couple, so do you guys want to just introduce yourselves again?
Yeah, sure. My name is Megan Shakur. I'm the legal assistant from the ECL. Shaker.
All right. Do we have anyone set up for public comment? Nope. Okay, we're going to move to the consent agenda. Hopefully you've all had a chance to review it. There's a few expenditures in there. Is there any commentary or you want to pull anything out of there? Michelle, thank you for anything from my country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and that does include, I'll just point out that includes the on-ramps contract, correct? Do you just want to pull that off for 1 second just to make sure no one has any objections to that, or do you want to say anything about it either? You guys?
I can just say that we might need to approve it, with certain acceptable negotiations. Right now, it's with our council looking over the changes that we've made and suggested, but based on conversations with on-ramps, we think it's a go with the changes we've suggested. So we might just, I don't know if that's done. I haven't been a relatively new member, but if we can say that that we approve it with the revisions that have been proposed by board members and the union committee, then we can move forward with it. Otherwise, we might need to come up with other arrangements to get it passed. And we are moving forward with our work with on-ramps. So they've been very flexible with working with us to get this done ASAP.
I think the answer to the business terms of the agreement might really change. The language around that, right? That's kind of critical.
Yes, most of the changes are to reflect that we're doing one search and not multiple searches. To reflect the fact that we've already made a $10,000 payment to them under a memorandum of understanding, and that was to get the ball rolling before we had the final contract approved by the board. There are some minute legal issues that, again, we're waiting for council to approve. But I think those who've been involved in the discussions have seen.
So is the draft that was in our agenda the edited version then, or was that the original? That was the edited one. Okay, so why don't we just, I'm gonna remove that from the consent agenda and we'll go back to the consent agenda and vote on that. So with on-ramps contract removed from it, resolution 2024-1-2110, be it resolved that by the Board of Trustees of the schools that the consent agenda for January 17th, 2024 be approved. Do I have a motion? Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is passed. Maybe we can just return then to the on-ramps contract then. Can we just create a new resolution to approve that contract with the notation that, how can we word it? Once final changes are recommended by our council, or?
Sure. Subject to changes approved by our council. Does that work for you?
If you want a number, you can take this number here. Resolution.
We're not going to do that? Okay.
So feel free to take that resolution.
Okay, so it's going to be 2024-01-2111.
So, let's not do that.
So, only reason why I don't want to do that is because we already listed this in the final agenda. So, I would just do the very next one, which would be the 13.
Okay. All right, we'll make it 13. Okay, so I think everyone's hopefully clear on what that resolution says. I'll motion that we approve it.
Really good.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, the resolution is passed. We can continue our CEO search. Okay, cruising right along. Legislative update.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So in your packet, you have a Pennsylvania School Board Association, and state legislative update. I just gave that to you also to change, we had a lot of the changes that are coming, but I want to highlight a few things that might be pertinent to us, this board and us as a school. The very first one was the school mental health grant funds. Just so everyone is aware, this is the $70,000 that's coming from the Council of Crime and Delinquency. We did not get that this year because of the time that it took to pass. It's finally now in the legislation, so we can apply for that $70,000 again. And that is for the mental health support that we've been putting in place. This is the one that we talked about also with Marissa McGuire, where we went and did the pre-search or pre-assessment, I should say, on our own, and we met tier 1, tier 2, and most of tier 3 services. So we're feeling pretty good about that, and we just have to now figure out what it is from that last tier of services we might want to spend that $70,000 on and get it approved through Pennsylvania Council of Crime and Delinquency. The other one on page 1 is school safety. I think I've talked to some of you about this, like that is that Pennsylvania Council of Crime and Delinquency. They have dissolved the Office of Safe Schools out of PDE, and everything now is going to be funneling through that one entity. So that would be the grant funding and any sort of information that comes about school safety is all through there. They have also dissolved the $70,000 safety grant that was just given to all school entities, and they have replaced it with a competitive grant process for charter schools and IUs and districts, and then school districts get a set amount of funding that we are unable to apply for. So we now, as a charter school, have to go and compete for safety money, but we don't have to compete for mental health. So that's just something for you all to be aware of in the legislative landscape. If you happen to know anyone that could support a change in that direction, that would be really helpful for us. I personally believe that school safety is important for all school entities and not just school districts. Then on page 2, on the back of that page, the other things that are important there, one is student teacher stipends. So this is kind of interesting and exciting, is that student teachers will now be able to get $10,000 stipends and grants for their work. And then if they also come to a school that has kind of high teacher turnover, high vacancies, they will get an additional $5,000. So that's something that for us to keep our eye on, whether or not our student teachers can apply for that extra $5,000. And then the other thing there is about teacher and staff vacancies. So they're trying to do as much as they can to see that some of the staff vacancies that we're seeing here in ECS are also all across the state. So a lot of the legislation that has to do with teacher and staff retention and turnover and vacancies, we'll start seeing more and more in that category, which is kind of nice. Yes, go ahead.
This is the first year that PD collected data on staff vacancies. They've never done it before, but this is the first year when we submitted our staff report to the state. They also had a second one which you had to fill out, which was any vacancies that were present as of October 1st. So I think they're trying to get their minds around what's going on there. Just as an aside, I think 10 years ago, we were graduating 20,000 teachers in Pennsylvania. The last year, I think it was like 5,000. So it was plummeted. We didn't see it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That actually is also listed on page 3 at the very bottom. So what you're speaking of is there, but it also is saying that PD is going to create and host a public job database. Right now, it's a paid kind of service. Sort of, whatever you want to post your jobs on the state. But it sounds like we'll also get from the state kind of a consortium of jobs, which is good and bad, which means that every school out there will be at the same place. So we'll be able to kind of see what jobs are available. But at the same time, might be a little bit easier for folks who are looking for jobs. And then also on that page there, right where I was on page 3 at the bottom, one of the other things to keep in mind is that there's going to be a financial literacy course requirement. So for the 25-26 school year, we will, they'll have model curriculum, and then beginning in 2026, we'll have to at our high school level, make sure that we have a mandatory personal financial literacy course. We are already ahead of that game. We do have an elective that's a financial literacy elective. So it should be really no hardship of us to just kind of make that a mandatory elective for folks. We just want to keep our eye on the number of credits that is required of them to graduate. So we're in a good space there, something to kind of highlight, which is good. And then the last bit of this document is things that are upcoming to kind of keep your eye on. On page 4, where it says headed to the governor's desk, so those are things that are potentially there. One of them is interesting, speaking kind of where we are this week with some remote instruction and flexible learning. The flexible instructional time requirement, one of the things that they are proposing is to take out the idea of we have to have 180 days of instruction and go to the number of minutes required for hours. So 900 for elementary and 990 for secondary. So that's an interesting thing. I know some schools are playing around with what to do on Fridays. Is it a virtual day? Is it a half day? And that also couples with your teacher shortages. Some schools are thinking about if you have a 4-day student week and you have planning on Friday, would that also then retain more teachers? So that's not anything that is yet to be determined, but it's something for us to keep our eye on. We have over 900 and 990. We do meet all of the minimum requirements and then exceed it because we have an extended school day and an extended school year. So that is something that we have to calculate every year. It's one of the reasons too that when we end up with some snow days, 1 or 2 is okay. So we did have our snow play day this year, this week already. The other one that is a little bit controversial is at the bottom of page 4. This is passed by the Senate, but has not been passed by the House, and that is mandating an armed security officer in schools. That is not necessarily one in every school building, but one for the district. And so we just need to make sure that we kind of, from a budget perspective, Michelle and I are keeping our eye on that, because if it does become a mandate, then we will have to find some funds for an armed security officer. And then the other things that are kind of coming that aren't really in here, but they're things we need to keep in mind. One is curriculum-wise, the STEEL standards or science standards in the state of Pennsylvania. They're coming to the time where we'll kick over from the Common Core PA Science to something called STEELs. And for us, that actually is a blow. One of the things that they have in these standards, which I think is interesting, is they're calling it a new term. It's environmental literacy. So I think we're all set there. All of our science standards, we have based all of our science off of the next generation science standards, and STEELs are actually based off of the next generation science standards. So talking to Virginia, Melanie, and Cynthia, our two executive directors of academics, they feel that there's going to be really little to no change. And our curriculum will be able to kind of implement that pretty quickly and easily. And then the other thing is, since we have our first graduating class, we do have graduation pathways in the state of Pennsylvania. Those actually were started last year, was the first year that 2023 seniors had to have a pathway of graduation. It could have been Keystone Proficiency or other different pathways. So this is our first year, so we need to make sure that all of our seniors have met one of the pathways, and that's Keystone Proficiency, meaning every single Keystone you took, you were proficient in. There's a composite pathway, a CTE concentrator pathway, an alternative assessment pathway, and an evidence-based pathway. And so to give you some data, right now our current seniors, 33% of them are meeting Keystone Proficiency, 27% meet composite, 33% are evidence-based, and 7% are the alternative assessment. So we're pretty evenly split there. One of the things that's nice in the evidence-based pathway is a lot of the things that we naturally have built in meet those pathways to graduation, service learning, internship hours, all of the things that we actually feel are high-quality educational experiences also meet those pathways.
When you reported those numbers on the pathways, does that mean all the students have already demonstrated proficiency, or they will, that's the path they're on?
That's the, we only have a few students who have yet to meet the proficiency, but they are taking a course that will allow them to get a certification at the end of it, and that certification counts as their evidence-based pathway. So they're already in the middle of it, so they will meet that standard, which is a handful of them. Yeah. So those are the things that are up and coming. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. And if you felt this was kind of important and good information, as things come available, I'm happy to also just report out on some of these legislative updates that are coming through.
I see there's this electric school buses bill.
Yeah.
That removed charter schools from their definition.
Yeah.
That would be a good thing.
It would.
Well, just one other point, a takeaway from the fact that environmental literacy will now be part of every required school is that, the question I have is, we need to even focus more on to make it a greater niche for us, since it's been the natural niche of the school, and we want to make sure that we can advertise as a school that, yes, everybody has environmental literacy requirements, but they're nothing like what happens at ECS.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I also think that it's something that we just need to get better about communicating what we do, for sure. I know that some of our folks have sat in on meetings with other people who are trying to implement STEELs, and they are struggling. Because they also are, for the first time, saying that science is connected to literacy and math, and you have to make sure you make those connections. And again, that's our course, right? So our environmental literacy course does just that. And so our folks sit in these meetings and we're able to them for the answers. I think it is a communication point, a selling point for sure.
Yeah, I can consult out on that.
On the right to know law, I'm not sure which way the exception is going. I'm sure other laws are written. So are those notes discoverable today? And the exemption is preventing them from the future, or is it now making them?
This is not yet done. So this is the right to know law is moving in the Senate and House. So if we haven't, this has not been decided upon. So whatever is the current right to know law stands.
But I guess are those notes available today to upon a right to know request, or?
You mean like if I do a note to a, yeah, anytime if a educator does a note that has a student name in it, it's part of right to know.
Right. So the exemption is potentially to prevent that.
That's all.
That's all. That's all. I wasn't sure which way the law is written to know which way the exemption.
It is, yeah, if you, so like my notebook, if I ever have student names and information about students and just anecdotal notes, that is correct.
I know, Matthew just said it, but there is something to the steel thing. There is potential to actually consider the statewide to promote this as a curriculum. Like, we do it better than anybody else. And so we should also draw upon our assets. So let's come back to that as this progresses.
Okay, construction management services update.
Well, for Matthew, on this one, if you want to share out, this refers to the environmental child school journey towards the construction of the high school project, and ultimately this is the construction management choice of services. And the team has worked really hard in the last months to move through and design and execute a selection process. So I'll hand it to Matthew to describe what we've done and how we've done it, and decide where you want to have this discussion.
So just to kind of recap, as John noted, what we've done to date is, we've discussed this for a while now, so let me step back. Originally, we were talking about selecting a CM. The reason behind this was to make sure that we had a partner at the table in the bidding process all the way through the final construction. We had our fiduciary interest and knowledge and everything else to execute this project. That's what that role is. So the group thing behind that was to go through a competitive selection process where we otherwise solicited out of RFP, solicited proposals. There were 5 firms on the original request. 3 responded. We went through interviews, comprehensive interviews. At the end of the day, I think the group feels that every single team can build this building. They're all names that we know in the Pittsburgh market. And ultimately, the F&F committee members that participated otherwise have a singular recommendation that we want to put forward. That was the process that we otherwise went through. And I'll call it the third leg of the stool to deliver the project. 1 being the architect, 2 being the CM, and then us being the school, obviously. So that's how we were presenting the project. I'll kind of pause there to see if anyone has questions on how the process was, how we got here.
No, you did a great job. It was a really different process. We won a lot, took a lot of folks. Ultimately landed, built a consensus amongst the group and landed on a group that we feel ultimately qualified. So yeah, I think everyone feels really good about how we landed.
So I'm not clear, what are we talking about now versus exactly?
So we could certainly exactly get into the detail. I think next steps after that discussion will be to create an AIA contract. I'm going to need Matthew's expertise, Nick's potentially too, as we engage with those folks on that journey, and then we'll bring that full contract back to the board for a vote next month. Full work well.
So no action today. We can talk about more in the executive committee, but there's no vote today on how we move forward. But the process is there. A front runner, we did learn a lot, to emphasize John's point, we did learn a lot from the interviews, not just about the firms that we were talking about, but just also about our project. So, yeah, that was one of the chief goals of going through that process. That process took time, but there is meaningful, tangible benefits to it.
Okay, so we'll discuss further later tonight. And we'll move on. So we're going to skip the next item.
Well, I think we'll jump in here instead. If you want to sort of jump into our process here, we had initially pushed a discussion of lottery policy for the board to review. We had some robust conversation and discussion last month. Ultimately, we met a couple of times, Stan and I, over the course of this past few weeks to sort of figure out what we want to do with this policy. Ultimately, Stan, we put in a good deal of effort to rewrite, realign, and push back against some of the language in there. We had one meeting today with our enrollment professional. Essentially, she sat with us and ensured that all of that rewrite was aligned to her work and spoke to her. So I think we got to a good place. It was a lot of work, so Stan, I think you can jump in here. It's certainly going to sit on the table for another month at this point. We'll rewrite. It'll go back to the law firm after tonight and ultimately get reformatted, rewritten, and be up for review over the course of this month.
Yeah, I think that's basically along the lines of what we talked about, and I think we covered most of it. During the process of sort of reviewing this, and I had looked at this a little bit last year as well, because I was interested in it. Obviously, it's a really important, not that all of our policies are important, but it's a really important policy, and I pointed out a number of things in the process to John and to a few others that I thought were confusing, potentially, or that I thought I want to have legal. Let's take another look at this, just because it is such an important part. I don't know that we would want to do that type of quite as in-depth of a review with every policy, but I think John and I talked about some of these. There are some policies that we have, and obviously at the beginning of this process, but that tend to be, very long and not always, sometimes repetitive, and it creates maybe confusion and with language that we could try to, summarize things more quickly and sort of make these policies, now that we're in a more mature stage at school, we don't just need a bucket full of policies. We now have existing policies. It's now time to kind of fine tune them based on our own experiences and things like that. So I think that was part of the idea of doing this. And of course, everyone will have a chance to sort of look at we've worked, hopefully simplified version is. And substantively, I don't think really much has changed, but it's just a refined, hopefully, and more understandable structure and terminology. So.
Yeah, I want to understand too that the multiple hours of work is put into not only guiding that process, but also helping me and some other folks on this team the interrelationship of some of the kind of the global structure of our policies and ensuring as we go forward that they speak to each other well. So thank you, Stan, for that work.
Okay, so that being said, we can move into discussion of two additional policies. These were sent out, the Safe to Say policy and the homeless students policy. I did want to just start by asking where these came from. Were these written by us here, or are these taken from the state, or where did these policies come from?
I know that they hear when we
Yeah.
discuss it. Sure. At least I would say to say.
Yeah. That Safe to Say is the program that has been mandated throughout the state of Pennsylvania for reporting, anonymous reporting of tips to schools, from students, from parents, from teachers, community members. And it is a great program that our students are able to use. We train our students, we train our staff. And then there is a small handful of us who are also trained as tip getters, I guess. But we're part of the group of folks who are able to get and receive those tips all the time. We also, just so everyone knows, we get those tips 24 hours a day. So there is a select handful of us that are on call for all of these things, overnight, weekends, it doesn't matter. And so I believe that a policy just to kind of codify how important this is really important. This came from our legal team, also the writing policy. It's a combination of what is already out there from the state and what other schools are doing.
Yeah, if I may, I didn't spend as much time on this as a lottery policy. I didn't have a chance, and probably wouldn't, but I'll confess that I was I read it a few times, and I was a little confused by it. There were some things in there that it definitely looks like it's taken from some of it from guidance that provided by the Attorney General about the state, and it sort of talks about it. It says, things like, please contact this number with questions. Well, who's that directed to? Somebody reading the policy, to staff, to students, just little things. I guess part of it, and thank you for explaining it, I think part of it was I sort of missed what's the policy. I see a lot of stuff in here about saying what's the Attorney General going to do, what's the the program is going to create safe communities and this and that, but it didn't really, I felt like maybe I'm missing it, but it just sort of, it doesn't necessarily make it clear to me what it is that staff or others are required to do exactly by this policy. As I understand it, and I don't really understand it, I just looked at it very quickly, the statute. Basically, the main requirement that I saw was that it sort of says that the Attorney General is going to issue regulations which are going to require schools to let's see, to help identify people and submit reports. Each school entity shall develop procedures for assessing and responding to reports. I didn't quite pick that up from this particular policy, and I read it, but I'm happy to comment about it. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if other thoughts.
Sounds like the policy needs to be that we're going to use safe to say it's going to comply with certain requirements of the law. And that's the policy, I think, that needs to be
Yeah.
To that point, I've got one is outline some procedures, not a policy line, the state, and I think it, on this one too, that you need to prescribe the CEO, and it will evaluate it, and it will review, blah, 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 and I'm not sure if that's in the case, or consistently evaluating its effectiveness, resources, I think this is 2 minutes of the process, but that to me didn't warrant reading the policy.
So I guess this brings up maybe a process thought. When we have these policies where it seems like some of us can really sit down and make some edits. I don't know that the Diligent Communities is set up for that. I haven't tried to edit a document in there, but I wonder if we could get these in Google Docs so that we can work on that or work on anything.
Well, further to that, Stan, we'll take some time next week to sort of work through our internal process. Because at one point involving the whole board in a large conversations. We sort of take some steps to do this screening to begin with, and if it is also like this one, is to sort of advocate for itself and really not terribly useful in terms of how to start to use it. We can clean that out and we can get it in front of our attorneys and rewrite it before it gets as a large group. Today what we're doing is taking it down to the attorney, hey, we need to pass this as is, and that clearly is not a process that works for us. So if it's okay with you, Adam, if you'll give Stan a little time there, next couple of weeks, we'll turn the process back to you to the board and say, you agree with this. I think it would then, whatever platform we use for internal review, that'll be included. So I think by the time we hit the next board meeting, we should have that selected. That's the process. And then the way pushing these onto the table here is push this to this new process.
I think your first question was a good one. So, what is this? Where is this coming from? Has this been, who drafted it? Who wants it? Who needs it? Who are the stakeholders that it's going to affect? Has it been they weighed in or need them to weigh in, especially for new policies in particular, which I think those are all questions and to your point, John, that's something we could maybe work out some of that ahead of time so when it comes to the meeting, we'll be able to address some of those questions or have some of those already worked out for discussion or for
Before anyone asks a question, part of that journey is we had a conversation before as well. We'll let them want to fill that'll be included in that journey too. I think the juxtaposition that, the essence of this particular policy against the next one that's really up for discussion in the next month or two, which is the homeless students. That's an existing policy. And that's okay. We'll provide that. Chat about that a little more, but it's an existing policy with very little change. And so that really takes less of an effort here, unless we so lose that in this construct.
just say, I mean, I think what you're talking about is a great process. I mean, I've done a lot of policy writing, and, you know, to take what somebody comes to you with and then just say, time out, why do we have this? Is it helping us? That's a really helpful process. So, you know, we may be able to remove some policies that are no longer helpful, you know, and that's probably not been built into our process so far. So it's just good information, annoying, but a helpful process.
Well, no, you get to spend time with stamps.
So which font do you prefer?
So I will add, Diligent Community, when we purchased that software, it does have a policy piece to it. But it's separate from what we currently have, so we have to set up the whole process of, meeting with your team and getting it all set up. And then they've requested all of the policies in Word form. So I have to call them and talk to them about that because all the policies are right now in PDF. So I would have to actually take the time to transfer them all into Word, which is a process. So,
yeah, maybe not the best use of your time, maybe there's a better way we can work on this, than just get the final draft over.
Can we use a Google Doc since we're on a Google platform anyway?
I mean, I don't have a problem with that, the functionality. And use Google Docs.
It has changed, like saving, it has history and it's always saving, so that's, we can comment on it since we're all on the Google platform anyway.
Yeah.
Just to see red lines.
Yeah, is that, I don't use it for that, but if that works on there, I don't have a problem. That's not how I'm used to doing it, but I can do it.
Yeah. And we already have a security with the board and this, so we can just get access to that alone, should be.
I think it makes sense to do something like that.
Yes.
word of advice, if we do use the Google platform, you have to go in through your ECS email. Because any request that I get from personal Gmails, I won't even look at because you can't go through personal emails. You have to make sure that you're logging in with your ECS.
Yeah, and it's in the, I don't know the weeds, but yeah, once you're gonna have to socialize the policy or send it back to the lawyers or something, I guarantee you the lawyers will just do the platform, maybe or something like that. You know, that's when all of these artifacts and formatting errors and things creep back in. So I think that's one of the things that we're looking vigilant about, obviously, in terms of getting the final form that we want for all of these policies, but and making sure we're not creating errors going on.
So the policy work is slow going, but I think we are making very good progress compared to where we were a year ago. And getting a solid structure and process in place is going to be really good in the long term. So thank you for the continued efforts. And I don't think we've successfully passed many policies yet. We're headed in the right direction.
It takes a lot of time to tune a Formula One car.
Yes. Okay, so the homeless policy.
The homeless policy we currently have is passed by the board in 2019. And last week, in preparation for today's meeting, we took the new one we supposedly have, and took it with the old one, figured out a highlight for you what the changes were. There were no changes. So I don't know whether you just want to read through this. It's the current policy that we have. Whether we need to have changes, we haven't seen anything out there that says we need to change it in some way. There's nothing new coming down. But this is the current policy that was passed in 2019.
Okay.
All right, business governance committee, do you have anything to
That was a typo.
typo?
Yeah.
That's something we need to do that?
We did a report readouts last month, so.
Okay, Stan, never mind. We're off the agenda.
And I had Kristen off there as well. I thought I knew those operational ones.
Okay, do we have anyone here from the union? No? Okay. Okay, our PCO representatives?
Hi. welcome to 2024. I just want to say thanks again for board members that started to attend the PCO meetings. It's actually been really great. Kristen and Roman came to the last one, and there were a lot of interested parents that, it created a lot of engaging conversations, so thank you. We do have a next PCO meeting February 7th. We're going to have actually an ECS parent come and present about like nutritious snacks for kids like that are actually your kids will probably enjoy eating. And then we have an ice skating event on Groundhog Day, Friday the 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30 at Pat Armory, which we're really glad we booked because Shenmon's not opening this year. So that was a win. The following Friday, we had a game night. Materials will start getting posted to advertise that more broadly to the ECS community starting next week. We have a few restaurants fundraisers coming up, and then we are doing the Blooming Bash this year, and that's shaping up pretty well. For those of you who don't know, I've personally never attended the Blooming Bash, but we're helping to plan it this year, which has been fun. We have several sponsors. We're currently looking for people to donate auction items, and it can be time, skill, like an actual item. So that's the deadline for that's going to be 14th of February or 16th of February with tickets going on sale for Blooming Bash on the 14th. The event itself is going to be taking place in April on the 21st at Ineffable Cafe. If you have not been there, it is an ECS family-owned business, and it's a really cool space. There's like a speakeasy attached to it, and they're letting us use the space to host the event. So we're really excited about that. And a few other things, but those are kind of further on in the school year, so less top of mind. Any questions?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Maybe we can auction off the day with Stan working on policy.
It's fun. Kids want to go to law school.
Okay. Thank you so much, Grace. I'm gonna just jump ahead to a resolution. Resolution 2024-1-2112. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the board membership of Megan Leach be approved.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right. Any opposed? Okay, congratulations. Okay, so now, actually, you can just stand and take this, and you guys can take this. And I'm going to swear you in. Not really yet. So everybody stand up, and why don't you just, maybe, I think you need to read it. I've never got sworn anyone in before. Here, all together.
All at the same time. Okay. I, Nick Unkovic, do solemnly swear that I will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and the bylaws of the Environmental Charter School, and perform my duties with fidelity.
Okay, it's official. And give it back to me. Okay.
Names are a little like.
Any other changes before we get into executive session? All right, so I'm going to make a motion to go to executive session. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We'll take a 2-minute recess.